Hey everyone, this is Marc Bates. Today we want to talk about pentadecanoic acid. Ooh, it's a mouthful. C15. It's easy, right? This is a relatively new one or it's one that we've recently discovered, and this is actually becoming quite the rage out there in nutrition land. If you haven't heard about it, you probably will shortly, so keep this in mind. Okay, oh, by the way, here's a picture of a supplement called Fatty 15, who's the company that is making C15 just becoming quite important around the world. Um, so the people who started this company were researchers at a dolphin institute, and they discovered how this fatty acid C15 seems to be very predominant in the blubber of marine animals, especially dolphins, and how when it was low in their bodies, they weren't doing well. But when it was very high, they were very healthy. And so they started researching it, and they found that C15 is in humans, and it is certainly something that you want to have. Okay? So it's an odd chain saturated fat, right? And that's what the number means. It shows the number of carbon molecules in the chain. Or carbon atoms, I'm sorry, in the molecule chain with no double bonds. And remember, odd chain ones seem to have really important numbers. Now, what we're looking at, if you have been around for any length of time, you probably know about omega-3 fatty acids, right? Which, fish oil. Everyone talks about omega-3s, that you want to have that, and that's true, and that's obviously an odd chain one. Well, there's also C5 and there's C7, which are pretty good, but they're not that very essential, right? I'm looking for that word. But C15 appears to be very essential, okay? It has this unusual molecular structure, being 15 carbon atoms in a single chain. And that makes it have some very important metabolic properties, right? That we're going to talk about, but you want to keep that in mind. Look for odd chain fatty acids. Now, this was early. It was dismissed by researchers. They're going, C15 is not that important because it's so insignificant. There's such a small amount. But sometimes things that are very small in terms of how much fat is it, how much is included in your body's chemistry, make a big difference. Okay, and this is very interesting. The primary source for C15 is full-fat dairy, right? Some comes from fish, and some from ruminant meats. That's cattle and lamb, but full-fat dairy becomes a big one here to take into. Now, once again, it was overlooked. People were looking at C16, C18, right? Palmitic, stearic acids. These are very common in foods we're eating, and they're going, this is what we have to be concerned with. But they're finding that these odd chain ones need to have a lot more research done on them because they seem to be very important to keeping us healthy, right? And as we're shifting to a more healthy diet, which includes a great deal of saturated fat, where we used to say saturated fats are bad, now we're going, oh, no, wait a minute. The research is definitely there that saturated fats are healthy. That's what you want to have, is saturated fats. Well, then guess what? C15 comes into play, and people are starting to take notice that while it's very small in terms of the total amount, it has a lot of great effects on the body. Okay, you'll notice here types of foods that carry this. Cheese, tallow. This is one I love. Grass-fed whole milk. 10. Well, guess what? You take grass-fed whole milk, you turn it into butter. Guess what? It's even higher than cheese. Grass-fed butter. Get that. Add that to your diet. I eat a lot of grass-fed butter. It really is that important. Okay? Okay. This is being proposed to be reclassified as a conditionally essential, which means you can live if you don't get C15 in your diet, but you will not be healthy without it. As healthy, right? And that's a major shift for the dietary government officials to make that kind of a change. Okay, there's a lot of research, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to talk about the importance of C15, right? But one of the ones that they're finding, which is really key, is it seems to have an impact on insulin sensitivity, right? Glucose metabolism and mitochondrial function. So if you think about everything we talk about here on the metabolic health coaching system, right? It's all about improving your metabolism, which is essentially how are you taking the fuel you're giving your body and turning it into energy. That's all metabolism, right? And it's all right at the mitochondrial level. And C15 seems to have a big impact there. So if you're really interested in your metabolic health, you gotta keep this in mind. Okay, it does have nutritional value, and of course, because the best source for this seems to be full-fat dairy, especially grass-fed butter. Well, guess what? This is really good because we're changing our diets to include lots of good, healthy butter and fat. Okay, there's a big emerging supplement market on this. C15 is the first one out there advertising this one. Honestly, it's a little expensive, and I'd rather just eat grass-fed butter. But if you want to take a supplement, especially if you don't want to take the butter, you can go ahead and order the supplement. I've tried it. It's pretty good, but I'd rather eat full-fat butter, right? And there's this whole thing of what is essential, what's not essential. Trust me, this is something you want to think about getting, but since you're going to get it in full-fat grass-fed butter, stock up on your Kelly Gold, right? That's what I use, but there are all kinds of grass-fed butters you can get. There's a book out there that talks about this. There's a bunch of videos that talk about this. This, once again, no one talked about this for years. And I've been doing this for almost 15 years now. Trust me, this is new stuff, and you want to jump on this one. You don't need to get crazy about it, but we've always talked about full-fat, grass-fed butter is great for you to have. Well, this is just another reason to do that. Okay?